The Jacki Daily Show. Follow me online on Twitter at Jacki Daily Host, Facebook, Instagram, Jacki Daily, and subscribe for free. iHeartRadio, iTunes, etc. So in studio with me today, usually he's on the phone, but today I was lucky enough to catch him in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He is Gregory Wrightstone, geologist and executive director of the CO2 Coalition, expert reviewer of the IPCC, that's the International Panel on Climate Change. Don't get angry thinking I let someone from the UN be on the show. That's not what this is. No. Gregory Wrightstone is, I guess, one of the most courageous men in America. It used to be I'd have to hunt down a member of SEAL Team 6 to get like the bravest man in America on the show. Now, you just go to the people who tell the truth about science. And you're the most courageous folks out there. So, Gregory, welcome back.
Good. I got breaking news for you on the cancel culture.
Please.
Just 2 hours ago. So LinkedIn deplatformed me.
I saw that.
And I appealed it, and I got the response about 2 hours ago.
Which was? What were their grounds?
Yeah, thank you very much, but no, we stick with our plans, and you're not allowed on LinkedIn anymore. And what's fascinating, you can't make this stuff up. In deplatforming me, they listed 3 of my posts that they called false and misleading. The top one they listed was where they had been removing posts right and left that I posted factual information, like temperature data over 1,000 years or 2,000 years, or polar bear population history, factual data. And I posted on LinkedIn, I said, I'm pretty sure LinkedIn is going to deplatform me soon. And because I'm posting this information. And that was what they used as, they called that post false and misleading. You understand? I said, they're going to deplatform me. And then they did. And so I guess I'm off forever. And I had a huge following there on LinkedIn. And again, I would post a lot of good data. And they didn't like it because it contradicted this notion of man-made catastrophic warming. And the main thing they really don't like is when you say that today's temperatures are not unusual and are not unprecedented, and then provide the reasons why it's not. They don't like that at all.
So is there an appeals process here?
Nope.
Okay.
That's it. It's over and done. Case closed. No more appeals. And that's just the way it is. So
I actually did not know that LinkedIn had joined the likes of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now we know. Where can you go to find safety in the virtual world? There's a group called Skylab that claims they're uncancelable, even have their own bank with the platform. So you cannot be demonetized. They won't permit it. It's part of the deal.
Never heard of them. I'll have to look it up.
Skylab, yeah.
And actually the CO2 Coalition, which I'm leading now, we were targeted on Facebook last year. We had first Stacey Abrams, Tom Steyer, and 19 leaders of environmental movements wrote a letter to Facebook demanding that we be deplatformed. And a week later, Elizabeth Warren and Sheldon Whitehouse, senators, both U.S. senators and 2 other senators, again wrote a letter to Zuckerberg demanding we be deplatformed for posting false and misleading information. Well, we don't. We're a scientific group. And to their credit, they kept us up. So, but the thing about that is, I knew we were being effective. If you've got Whitehouse, Elizabeth Warren, Tom Steyer, Stacey Abrams, and they're all coming direct. They were coming after us, not the other groups.
Right.
So in World War II, what did they say about getting a lot of flack? If you were getting a lot of flack, you were right over the target.
That's right.
So
the whole clown car, including Elizabeth Warren. Now, why Stacey Abrams? Like, listen, she's kind of a nobody. She lost the Georgia governor's race. She's not elected to do anything. So why do we care what Stacey Abrams? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know why she was there, but it was part of it. And she's got a name, and but Tom Steyer, everybody knows. He throws money around right and left at these left-wing groups.
Right. Certainly. Well, somehow, despite your blackballing, which is always a good sign, you're getting warm, I was able to find a few things you've written lately, such as, let's see, where do you even, let's back up to your email you sent me. You talked about electric cars and electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Actually, let's start with those two because no one's covering the exploding electric cars. Or a few are. Very few.
I broke that a couple of weeks ago. It's been written about subsequently. There's a terrible, terrible tragedy that's going to befall us soon. We know that electric vehicle cars, mostly the Chevy Volts, but also the Prius, the other, the Teslas, they do just catch fire. They spontaneously combust, and that's because of their lithium-ion batteries. And in fact, driving north out of Washington, D.C. a week ago. I passed a car that was flaming, and it had to be an electric. It had all the characteristics of an electric vehicle fire. We see these Chevy Volt. The Chevy advises if you're an owner of the Volt, don't park it in your garage. And if you're an electric vehicle owner, I would not, whatever you do, don't park it in your garage, and especially do not charge it in your garage. What we've seen recently, there were 2 electric bus fires in Germany and in China where these buses, in the middle of the night, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, they weren't doing anything. They were just sitting there, and the lithium-ion batteries combusted. And what it did was ignited the buses on either side of them, these electric buses, and the entire bus garage, both in Germany and China, went up in flames. And that's prompted several towns in Bavaria to ban electric vehicles from inside parking garages. And we should consider that here. Think about this scenario. This is a nightmare scenario. You have a Chevy Volt or a Tesla, whatever it might be, parked in the underground, on the second or third level down of an underground parking garage, under an office building, under an apartment building. Well, number one, bear in mind, these fires, when they occur, you can't put them out. It takes over 30,000 gallons of water, and you can't even get, they're mounted under the carriage of the vehicles. You can't actually apply water directly. And what they do is just allow them to burn out, which takes many hours. And so how do you put out an electric vehicle fire under an office building? There might be 2,000 people in that building.
Yeah.
And there, or I look at the apartment building I live in, Arlington, Virginia. My wife and I said, what happens if this happens? And, luckily we're on the second floor so they could come get us. But God help those people who are on the 9th or 10th floor.
Right.
Because those cars, it'll be a chain reaction. I'm just telling you, it's not a matter of when or if, but when it's going to happen.
Well, and I saw on your social media, you were saying, do not park next to an electric vehicle. And I thought, that's good advice.
It is.
And you would only hear this on the Jacki Daily Show or on Gregory Wrightstone's social media, but really, these stories get suppressed because it's not part of the broader narrative. I found, here from the Stephen Loveday is his name. He wrote, recalled 2017 Chevy Bolt EV catches fire in parking lot. Owner says the electric car wasn't even plugged in or running. So understand, this is middle of the night, 2 a.m. The neighbors hear the sound. They had, like, what the witnesses have said. Quote, heard a loud boom, then cracking sounds, and the huge flame. They videotaped this and sent it to the guy who's asleep. Presumably, that car's been sitting there for a while. So we don't even know exactly what triggered this. But this is one of several stories, if you really dig, you will find. And so, Chevy's recalled this vehicle, or recalled at least the battery component.
Nearly all of the Volts have been recalled now. This is the third recall of the Chevy Volt. The problem is lithium is a very unstable. It's called an alkali metal. Sodium by itself is an alkali metal. And I had this conversation. The chairman of the CO2 Coalition is Dr. Will Happer. And he says, "Oh, Greg, yes. When I was a young man in university studying, I was warned. I was working with lithium, and my colleagues warned me against doing anything with lithium because it was so dangerous." He said he put a Bunsen burner. He put a small piece of lithium a non-oxygenated beaker and heated it up. And he said it started heating way beyond what could be expected. And he took the Bunsen burner away, and the temperatures kept increasing. So it was reacting, actually, he said, with the glass. It finally burned a hole through the bottom of the beaker, landed on a wooden bench, burned itself through that, and then finally extinguished itself into the flooring. And he said, I learned my lesson there. So this stuff it's dangerous. Well, let me ask you, and again, we talked about electric vehicles. Let's pose this, Jackie. You're in New Orleans, and Hurricane Ida's bearing down on you, and you and your husband say, Jackie, we got to get out of here. Let's head north. And in your garage is a fully charged Tesla, and right next to it is a 2014 Ford Taurus with a full tank of gas. Which car will you select to head north?
Excellent point. It will be that crappy Taurus.
You got that right.
Yeah.
You head north in that Tesla. Number one, you can't run it's 95, it's raining. You can't run the air conditioning because that's just going to suck up all the electric that you need to get to Baton Rouge or Tennessee or wherever you're headed, right? You can't run the electric. Can't put the windows down because it's raining sideways. And, or it's just stupid things like that. Or
and you also can't charge it in your house anymore.
Right.
Right. It used to be the only way you could have an electric vehicle and make it practical is if you charge it all night at home.
And in an evacuation scenario like that, I mean, you're probably doing 8 to 10 miles an hour at the best with tens of thousands of people all heading out of there. You're going to need to recharge before you get 30 miles out of New Orleans. Or what if you're in Minnesota in January and it's 10 degrees and a 30 mile an hour when you get caught in a snowstorm? I know you grew up in the Northeast. That happens.
Yes.
And what happens if you get caught? You sit and idle your car with the heater on.
Yes. You
can't do that with an electric vehicle. You can't run the heater. Again, you can't run it because it's going to just suck up all the electric that you need to get somewhere finally. And so you'll probably get out of your car and go to the next gasoline-powered vehicle and plead for them to let you in the back seat so you don't freeze to death.
Lest I offended crappy Taurus owners, I want you... See, I see it across the studio right here. I want you to know, in 1996, I had my very own crappy Taurus in college. So I know of what I speak. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone. He heads up the CO2 Coalition. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Listening to the Jackie Daily Show. I'm continuing a conversation with Gregory Wrightstone, and he heads up the CO2 Coalition. He's executive director. He's a geologist, and he's newly deplatformed from LinkedIn. So he's hot. All right, I have here topic number 2, which is federal regulation, not climate change, explains California's wildfire crisis. I've talked about this a lot. I feel like I have this conversation regularly. It never dies. It never ends. So let's have it again because I can tell our explanation of why government can create problems like this is not well understood.
Yeah, in fact, I just spoke this morning at a conference, and that was one of the highlights of climate change misinformation is about these forest fires. In the United States, now we're being told that forest fires are increasing and the area burned is greatly increasing. That's actually not so. If we look at the big data points going back more than 100 years, we find that fires in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s were some 20 to 30 or 80%. We're 20% of what they were during that time frame. And has the area burned increased slightly over the last several decades? Yes, it has. But again, we're down at a 25, 30% of what they used to be. And so what we see here, it's likely, and it's more than likely, each individual fire is more intense and larger than what they were in the past. And that's due to poor forest management. And in the 1980s, remember the spotted owl, Bill Clinton?
Yes.
You're too young for that, Jack.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm older than I look.
Okay.
That Botox works great.
All right, I don't believe that. But in the 80s, we stopped logging in the national forest because of the spotted owl. And now, apparently, in order to save the forest, we need to destroy the forest. Because if you like spotted owl, I hope you like it well done and roasted, because that's what you're going to get. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy tells us that there are 4 to 5 times too many trees per acre. Now, it's easy to understand that leads to more fuel, more intense fires. But think about this, too. The second greatest cause of soil moisture loss, first is evaporation. The second greatest is the amount of soil or soil moisture that's removed by plants and trees. So now you've got 4 to 5 times too many trees competing for that same scarce soil moisture. So it's actually increasing the aridity. And then think about this too, whenever fires do break out, it used to be that there were logging roads going all through these forests. Well, they've all grown up. It used to be they get on the logging roads, they could drive their equipment back to get to the fire right away. And you need that big equipment to try and get them out fast. They can't do that now because it's all grown up. There's another added component that's adding a lot to this. It's invasive plant species. In the west, it's called cheatgrass, and in the east, it's not happened yet, but my prediction is we're going to have some severe fire seasons in the east, the northeast, down to Georgia, because we've got this thing. It's called Japanese stiltgrass, and what this is, these are grasses that when they dry out, it's just kindling, just waiting for a spark.
Right, and you know, the people who are not understanding what you're saying, you're a geologist, they tend to live in the inner city, right? These are like your professors, your opiners, your PhDs, and I can tell you as someone who grew up in Appalachia, who built fires, my job was to gather kindling when I was a little girl outside because we had a wood-burning stove. It was newspapers, it was little pieces of wood, shards of wood, dried out pieces of wood, anything we could find to help start the fire. I seriously question that the ability of someone to have an opinion about this if they've never built a fire. The simple act of building a fire, which is an ancient practice by humankind, still goes on in Appalachia right now in households, will teach you, fires don't just sort of kind of break out on their own even when fire is present. So you don't just light a log per se. There has to be kindling to ensure success. And I don't think the word kindling is even known, Gregory. I'm going to ask you to define the word kindling.
It's a small twig or something that, like you say, you have to, when you start a fire, you have to start it with, in this case, dried grasses, and then you build
dead wood.
Small pieces of dead wood, and then as the fire starts, you add bigger pieces of wood, and then bigger pieces, and then you find, like, after it's been going, you put in full-size logs, because you can't start a fire, a forest fire. There has to be an ignition source, and most of these are ignited by these dried grasses, sparks that might generate that. And so these are dangerous things. I was interviewed by a radio host last week in Reno. She said her homeowners association, she's not allowed to rake the pine needles around her property. Well, these pine needles are, think about this. You've been building fire, those things just, it's a fire waiting to happen.
They're great for kindling.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
great. If you're a little girl and you're 3 years old in Southern Ohio, you know this. You know this because you've done it. I just can't emphasize enough. We're so far removed from natural processes that the common sense is not coming through. I have a question for you, kind of a theory I came up with from listening to the Gavin Newsom explanation for California fires versus perhaps yours. I thought, okay, California law and federal law over the past 10 to 15 years is supposed to leave the forest more in its natural state. They think that's better. And I thought, well, that seems rational to me. Here's probably where it falls apart. If you leave it to nature, nature will take care of the problem rather than us doing it our way, removing dead trees or logging or whatever. If we don't manage, nature will. And that means lightning. And that means natural forest fires. And that means no regard for the artificial lines we've drawn for where does a neighborhood start and where does the forest end. So, yeah, I mean, it seems to me like you can take that position, but you're saying let nature decide where the next big forest fire starts and how far it goes. Is that their position?
It sounds like it, but saying, well, we want the natural forces to come back and be naturally. But if you look at the pictures in the 1800s when the settlers first arrived of these areas that are now fully timbered and fully forested, they weren't forested back when the settlers arrived. They were mostly grasslands, natural grasslands with stands of timber. And if you look at those stands, because these grass fires would periodically sweep through, if you look at the stands of timber, you'll find that the first limbs are maybe 15 feet off the ground because these low-intensity grass fires would come through and burn off the bottoms. And so it's quite a different forest that we see today in both the West and the East and or across the country. So are forest fires' size and intensity increasing? Yes. Is it our fault? Yes. Is it climate change? No. And that's the big takeaway. But they get the point. Anything they can do, anything unusual, dangerous, climate change. And I just testified 2 weeks ago in Pennsylvania against a stupid carbon tax they're having up there, and they were justifying it. Again, you can't make this stuff up. They had 7 justifications. First was precipitation's increasing, and it's going to lead to flooding. And then I'm going to let you guess. What was the second one?
Drought.
You got it.
How did I know that?
She's so good.
We did not rehearse this. I haven't seen Gregory in a long time.
Jackie, you're right. So they're predicting because of climate change, we're going to increase precipitation and we're going to increase drought. I mean, it defies logic. I mean, they should just pick one, right? Pick one. It can't be both. And so I went through and debunked that. And that's what we at the CO2 Coalition do. We're the more than 70 of the top scientists and energy experts in the world. And we're proud of leading this group. These are just stellar scientists, and we're fighting back using science, facts, and data. I like to think of us as the tip of the spear when it comes to providing the science, the facts, and the data to dispute this notion of man-made catastrophic warming.
So I've only got a couple minutes left, but please tell them the names of your publications and where they can purchase them.
Well, these are all free. They're at the CO2 Coalition. Well, my publication is a book called Inconvenient Facts. We got a real bump last month when Candace Owens on her podcast I had no idea. She held it up and she said, Inconvenient Facts, she held it up. She says, this book has changed everything I believe about climate change. And then she said, every child in America needs to read this book. And this is Candace Owens.
Oh, yeah.
And I was blown away.
Solid.
She's it, man.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. So we published it almost 4 years ago, and it's been a #1 bestseller on Amazon for a lot of that time. It isn't today, but as recently a month ago, it was #1 on Amazon in several categories. Or you can go to the co2coalition.org to learn more about us. Again, some of the top scientists in the world.
Well, and as I said in previous segments with Gregory Wrightstone, this is the man who turned book sales model on its head. Most people release a book, it has its spike, and then it goes away. Not Gregory Wrightstone. This man gets attacked constantly, and boom, sales go up again. Boom, sales go up again. So I'm very proud of you, and I don't know anyone who's done what you've done with book sales. So congratulations, and thank you, Candace Owens.
Oh, thank you, Candace.
Yeah, for so many things, but she's tremendous. She was on the show last year, and we did a show together. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Okay.
It's an environmental topic. It's about synthetic estrogens in your environment. So
wow.
If you haven't seen it, check that out. All right, I got to go to break. You're listening to the Jacki Daily Show.